meeting of the Sustainability Advisory Board on Monday, June 7th at 6:00 p.m. Call the meeting to order. Would you please call the roll, Brandon?
Sure. Ms. Marone,
Where'd she go?
Can you guys hear me? I'm here.
You are.
okay,
Okay.
thank you. Mr. DeGroot,
Here.
looks like Mr. Spanbauer,
Here.
Mr. Beardsley,
Here.
Miss Oliver,
Here.
Mr. Wojciechowski,
Here.
and Miss Davy.
Here.
Okay.
Okay. This is the time that we would have any public comment. If anyone is interested in speaking to anything that's either on the agenda or not on the agenda, you could have 3 minutes now. You're allowed to do that if you wish to. It's certainly not required. Is there anybody who does want to speak to the board about anything tonight? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we will move on to the approval of minutes from our May 3rd meeting. I know you've all read the minutes very carefully. I would like to have a motion, please, to accept the minutes as written.
I'll motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you. Who was that?
Brad.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Second, this is Vic.
Thanks, Vic. Okay, all in favor of, oh, we have to call the roll, don't we?
Yep.
Okay, will you please call the roll, Brandon?
Sure. Okay, Mr. Spanbauer,
Aye.
Miss Marone,
Hi.
Mr. DeGroot, you're muted, Eric.
Aye.
Thank you. Miss Oliver,
Aye.
Mr. Wojciechowski,
I think you're muted, Aaron.
Aye.
thank you, and Miss Davy.
Aye.
Okay, that's passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have two wonderful presentations tonight. The first is going to be by Lisa Marone and Brandon Nielsen, who've been working on something. Excuse me, it's a solar panel city comparison. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Brandon, because hopefully you can talk better than I can.
All right, yeah, let me just share my screen here. Lisa put together a little presentation or a little PowerPoint presentation here, so share my screen. And Lisa, if you want to go ahead and everybody can see the screen.
I can't see it right now. Oh, now I can.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
So, hey everyone, I'm Lisa, and this is the Oshkosh solar permitting process presentation Mark Lyons and Brandon asked me to look into. There had been some requests from citizens that would like to have Oshkosh solar permits. The reason being is right now the cost for a solar permit in Oshkosh is extremely high compared to other cities. So we're looking at about $450 just to get the conditional use permit. And the reason this cost is so high is because it is a conditional use permit, meaning that there's not a specific ordinance in the Oshkosh code that allows people to get solar panels right now. So that is a problem for contractors, solar contractors who are trying to install solar panels because the delay time takes about 4 to 6 weeks for the permit process to be completed. And that just adds on to the cost and time that the customer has to wait for their solar panel. If you want to press next, Brandon. Okay, so here is a map. You might have to zone or a graph. You might have to zoom in a little bit, but I want to point out that at the way far right is Oshkosh. So we're way at the top with the price on zoning permits. And if you look to the left, it starts out at about $25 and it goes up from there. So these are surrounding cities in the Fox Valley area. Some of them are smaller than Oshkosh. They're town villages and such. And this was important to show the city that we actually are the #1 highest permit price. So we would like to come up with a plan to bring that down and make it easier and more efficient for people to get those solar panels. We looked at other cities, and just for reference, we put the city of La Crosse on here. There's a couple tabs that we could click on, but if people want to look at this later and check out the tabs, it just breaks down some of the simpler ways to get solar panels. So like, for example, city of La Crosse has a checklist that customers can click on, and it goes through all the processes and the cost, who you have to contact. So this tab is for the SoulSmart, and SoulSmart actually helps cities organize and complete their ordinances when they're ready to change or add solar to their zoning code. So this will be helpful for Brandon and Mark to use. This is just a link that was on their website. So we would like to suggest that Oshkosh would have some type of checklist like this so people can get their questions answered quickly and have a faster process to completing the solar permit. So yeah, looks like La Crosse is about $50 for the application. That was kind of what I was seeing for the surrounding areas. Appleton had a similar price. And basically all it took was someone to click a link and fill out a permit application, and then they would be approved. There are some things that go behind the scenes, inspections at the end, and some cities did have some fire codes in there that you would have to follow. But other than that, it was pretty simple. You can press next. Okay, so then the city of Wausau, I added Wausau on here because what they're doing is they're having a grow solar in Wausau. So what they try to do is plan their city where they have utilities or the water center. They'll add the solar panels to those buildings. And that's something that I didn't see around in the Fox Valley where we actually had solar panels on the government buildings. So that's a big thing for northern Wisconsin. If you want to try clicking on those links, Brandon, the solar power. So Grow Solar is an educational movement, and they partnered with Wausau. So Wausau actually has events throughout the fall and spring where they talk to their citizens about solar and how they can add solar to their yard, their property, their buildings. So that's something that just shows the community support from the government and from the nonprofit area.
And I think, I don't know if Lisa, you haven't been part of the SAB for too long, but this is the MREA is what Pat on the board has been, I think, in conversation with to do what I think it's called a solar group buy. So I think that is the group that takes care of that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen their name around. So yes, that's definitely something we would want to look into. And there's a lot of great resources available for solar that if you guys want to check these links out, they might help you learn more about solar panels.
And I don't think there's any other links on this page.
Okay, so yeah, that's just a picture. I believe that is actually on government property in Wausau, that solar panel. So it's not on a building, it's on space near the water utility center. But just another example of people taking action and seeing it go through.
Maybe this was the link.
Oh, okay. So we have Appleton Solar here. Appleton Solar is actually a contractor here in the Fox Valley, and they do get a lot of calls about Oshkosh. The owner of Appleton Solar would like to make the process in Oshkosh simpler and more cost effective. So that's kind of what jump started this project. The incentives here, if you click on that tab, just goes through the type of incentives that Wisconsin currently offers. So people might be interested in that. It kind of gives a breakdown of the cost as well.
For sure.
And then if you go back to that slide, I can just tell you guys about those pictures real quick and we can answer some questions at the end. So it looks like right in the middle, that would be a residential home that has solar panels on their house. Underneath that picture to the right is like a carport, and that's located in Ripon, Wisconsin. And that's kind of like a parking area that collects sun. And we could do something like that with parking. And then to the left, I believe that's somewhere in Kokana, and that is just freestanding on someone's property. So just to show you the difference where some people have them on their homes, but others keep them in their yard or on a vacant property. And if you guys have questions, technical questions, you can ask Brandon, myself, or Mark. And yeah, we're excited to try and get this permit cost down here in Oshkosh and get more customers for solar.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
So does anybody from the board have any questions regarding the presentation? Or Mark, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I can add a few comments. So yeah, right now, obviously, when our code was updated in 2017, the decision at that time was to require a conditional use permit for solar panels in all settings, whether it be, standalone commercial grade or small solar energy systems on even a residential property. Obviously, the solar has become more and more prevalent in our community as well as other communities. It became aware that obviously we are regulating these differently than a lot of folks statewide and even locally. So we had asked Lisa to kind of take a peek, see where we compare. Obviously, the main factor in the cost of why we're so much higher is the fact that it's regulated as a conditional use permit. That adds significant cost into the process. Based on Lisa's research, it looks like we're the only ones probably in the immediate area or even greater Wisconsin area that are still doing them through that process. So, we kind of charged her with taking a look and telling us how do we match up to the local area. So find out if we are the outlier, which, it's starting, I think, appear that we definitely are. And now may be the time with some direction from this board. We are going to Plan Commission next week with the same presentation as a workshop to get some direction to them. And then hopefully, if both boards are in agreement or of a similar mindset, we will begin preparing a text amendment to the zoning code to remove that conditional use permit, as well as potentially look at some of the other things that Lisa had mentioned about how people are regulating these more of through the, what type of applications or paperwork to require instead of the conditional use permit.
Looks
I
like
see
Brad
that
has a
Brad has
question.
a question.
Oh, thanks, Marky.
Thanks. Yeah. So can folks hear me okay?
Yes.
So it sounds like if both the SAB and the Planning Commission are in agreement, will that just create a new, I guess, sort of pathway for folks to get a permit at a cheaper rate, at a smaller fee?
So it would not necessarily create a new pathway in and of itself. What we would be looking at doing is amending our zoning ordinance to remove that it's a conditional use permit, make them a by right permitted use. By removing that CUP condition, we remove the cost associated with it.
Okay. So it sort of gets permitted separately.
Yeah, it becomes a by right permitted use in our zoning ordinance, therefore removing the cost burden of the conditional use permit.
Okay. And then how will the new cost be determined?
That's one thing we'll still need to determine. There are obviously building code requirement costs that would be separate from anything we are doing. But we'd be looking to more put ourselves in line with what other communities are doing. One thing that we still need to flesh out a little bit is exactly what that review cost would be. We'd like to directly relate the cost to any work that would be included. So as we work with our inspection division to determine if there are any additional information that would be needed for them to issue the permit, we would tie those costs directly to it. If they are relatively confident what we have in place today meets their needs, we could potentially be removing all costs outside of just a nominal permit fee.
Mm-hmm. And then once those things are in place, will there be a plan to get this information readily available to citizens who are looking for it so that, if I'm looking to put solar on my home, I can go to a website and say, here's step one, here's step two, and it's kind of laid out in a very straightforward manner.
Yep, definitely something we can work towards.
Yeah, that like we kind of showed how the city of La Crosse had a page designated for solar. I think that would be super helpful, even if it's just a simple checklist that we can push out online and just have in paper form for City Hall as well. So people know, kind of similar to the other brochures that we have for different permits.
Yep.
Can I ask what the timeline is on that? And the only reason I ask is because the ITC, which has been extended, many times, but that income tax credit currently stands at 26% and then will continue to drop off unless Congress, as they have done in the past, extend that, sort of year by year. But that tax credit is going to continue to drop in percentage. So it behooves people to put solar on their panel in 2020, put solar on their homes in 2021, and that drops off, next year, right? Unless we sort of just assume that the administration is going to act as they have, right? And so I think expediting our process and making that as smooth as possible seems to make sense.
Yeah, so in terms of ordinance modifications, they do take about 8 weeks because it is a council level zoning ordinance change, which is pretty stringent, laid out through the state law how that process takes place. So once this board weighs in today, Planning Commission weighs in next Tuesday, we would begin that process. But there is a legal responsible requirement of how we have to go about doing it. And unfortunately, we don't have a say over how long that process takes.
But for instance, Brad, this is going to Plan Commission next week on the 15th for the same presentation. So it's kind of moving as fast as it can, I guess you could say.
Correct. Yeah, we're trying to get this done in a timely fashion because we understand those ramifications. But like I said, we do have to go through that process. Unfortunately, there is no way around it.
Okay, I see Aaron has his hand up.
You. So I'm just wondering, timeline wise, we obviously you probably couldn't have it to us to council by the 22nd. That's kind of cutting it. But what about the 13th of July? Is that a reasonable time to have council take it up? Because I know there are other members on the council who are supportive of this, and we'd like to see it done as possible.
Yep, quickest timeline we could do. Let's see, today is the 7th, 8th, 15th July. Sorry, I'm pulling up a calendar to talk this through out loud. if I could get my computer to cooperate. So the next plan commission meeting would be then July 6th. It could go to first reading at council on July 13th, and then second reading on July 27th for final hearing. Obviously, as council, you can choose to waive second reading and adopt on first. That would be a council discretion.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
So what do you want from us tonight to get this rolling so that when it gets to Plan Commission next week, we will have already approved this?
So what we're looking at from my perspective is if this is something you would like us to pursue, simply a voice vote or some way to indicate to us you support what we want to do, and staff will begin moving forward with it. We aren't looking for a resolution or anything to council because it is staff initiated, so we already have that backing. And if between now and when we go to official public hearing, you want to do a resolution supporting the change, we're happy to have you do that. But for tonight, we don't need it. Tonight, we're just looking for some comments and some direction if you guys support the concept.
Okay, well, would you like us to raise our hand if we do agree with this? Would that help?
Sure. Is there any other comments from board members? I'd just like to get as much feedback as possible, but I think, most people are pretty supportive of this. I don't see any other comments. So yeah, if you could just raise your hand so we can see who from the board all supports the concept of removing that conditional use permit.
Thank you, Mark. And then if you guys just want to leave those up, I'll take these notes down here.
Okay. Hi, Eric. Okay, let's move on to the next item then. If we've all agreed that we want to see that move on, we'll go with that. And then we'll move on to our next presentation tonight, which is Jen Sattler. She's going to be sharing some thoughts about urban permaculture and orchards. And it may also have zoning ramifications too. I don't know. Okay, Jen, you can take it from there.
All right. I have a short presentation, so I'm going to share my screen.
And then Jen, in the beginning of your presentation, if you could just, state, who you are, what your address is, kind of that whole thing.
Yep. Can you guys see my screen or no?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, I hit a share button.
There you go.
There it comes.
Okay, perfect. Let's see here. Just need to. Yeah, so my name is Jen Sattler. This is my husband, Adam. We are residents of Oshkosh. We live at 2614 Harrison Street, Oshkosh, so on the northeast side of town. We've lived here for a couple of years now, and we own 1 full acre on our residential lot. Before I get started talking about urban agriculture and the benefits and some adaptations for the zoning code that we'd like to present to the board, we'd like to give you a little bit of background about both of us. We're both from small family farms in Wisconsin, so we're natives here. I grew up with a roadside market, big market garden. I have a biology degree from UW Oshkosh. Post-graduation, my husband and I are founding members of the Oshkosh Food Co-op. We're members number 12. So we've been with that project from the beginning. I spent 3 years working for Growing Oshkosh, first as their school garden coordinator and then later as their youth program manager. And around that time, I also worked for the Wisconsin School Garden Network as their central regional coordinator. So I took care of this 6th of the state with their school garden programs, investing in them, providing resources and training for that. Currently, I serve as the STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics teacher at Davis Child Care Center in Oshkosh, and I also curate their gardens and outdoor classroom space. Additionally, I am a certified permaculture designer. So permaculture, if you're unfamiliar with that term, it's a holistic design process in which for agriculturally productive ecosystems. So basically you are farming in the guise of nature. So really looking at how to integrate systems and do it in the way that's most beneficial to all parts of the system. Do you want to add anything about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Adam, and I also graduated from UW-Oshkosh, environmental studies degree with minors in geography and sustainable management. For a year and a half, just out of college, I worked for the Outagamie County Land Conservation Department, working with local farmers. And then for 4.5 years, I worked for a small dairy company. So I am also highly invested in the local agriculture and food systems.
So we're local food people. We really want to see that grow and benefit here. We're pretty committed to Oshkosh. We love this town. I mean, this is our home. We plan to stay here. And so what we'd like to present to you tonight is just some thoughts that we have and that we'd like to see the Sustainability Advisory Board take up and kind of help us champion. So we'll get started. So first we're going to go through a quick definition of what urban agriculture is, so we all have a working definition together. We'll talk about some of the benefits and challenges of that. Then we're going to look at a case study of St. Paul, Minnesota, and what they have for their urban agriculture and their zoning and code. And then we'll have some time for some questions and answers. This is a picture of Frogtown Farm, which is a nonprofit urban farm in St. Paul. It's actually 13 acres, but it's a farm and park. So 5.5 acres is a farm and the rest is a park for people to visit. So the EPA denotes that urban agriculture is part of a local food system, that the food is produced within an urban area and it's marketed to consumers in that area. It can include animal husbandry, beekeeping, aquaculture, aquaponics, non-food products such as producing seeds, cultivating seedlings, growing flowers. And lastly, they note that it contributes to the revitalization of abandoned or underutilized urban land, and there are social and economic benefits to urban communities as well as beneficial impacts to the urban landscape. This is a picture of Ohio City Farm in Cleveland, Ohio. It's one of the larger farms across the United States. It's about 6 acres in the middle of Cleveland. So now we're going to move on to kind of going over a few of the benefits of urban agriculture. We're going to focus first on like the social and economic benefits, and that urban agriculture is accessible. It increases food security by providing access to fresh produce and goods in the community. A lot of times the produce that are grown on urban farms are they're more accessible to low income residents, this is especially true in food deserts in cities. And then on the flip side, for entrepreneurs, like urban agriculture can be pretty accessible because it's a rather low risk startup for a business. A lot of entrepreneurs either have access to some small parts of land in the city or a vacant building or a rooftop. There's so many different ways that you can do urban agriculture, which brings me to my second point is that urban agriculture is really adaptable. You can utilize a backyard, a front yard, a rooftop. I know rooftop gardens are for urban agriculture are pretty popular in New York and Chicago. And like these can take place and fit into existing neighborhoods in a really cohesive way because they take underutilized land that's already there and turn it into something that beautifies the community. So that brings us to the third point of that urban agriculture. It builds community. It can help stimulate the local economy by providing income sources for residents who have these spaces. It encourages neighborhood interactions. There was a study done in Baltimore that gardeners noted a connection to nature and a pride for space surrounding urban agriculture. And at the neighborhood level, the trusting relationships are developed because food is a common experience, and growing food can help bridge the gap between different cultures, genders, socioeconomic classes, and ethnicities. It creates like this shared space. And there's also another study done that notes that gardens and urban farms are less likely to be vandalized than other parts of cities. Lastly, urban agriculture it just provides itself like a great opportunity for education. It just being there, it invites people to learn about food systems, where the food comes from, how it might be grown. Talks about sustainability and healthy lifestyles. recently just learned about a urban farm in Dallas called Bonton Farm that is now farming 42 acres across the entire city of Dallas. And they're really using that as places to help lift people out of poverty by giving them jobs, giving them skills, teaching them healthy habits, and providing them spaces to begin to get themselves on the right foot. So there's a ton of social and economic benefits for urban agriculture. And then the other side of urban agriculture is the environmental and sustainable benefits. The first one being proximity and food miles. The average food mile for conventionally grown food is almost 1,500 miles. And so when you can go down the road and get some produce from your neighbor in your neighborhood, that's like a mile. So thinking about farm to table and increasing the amount of local food supply, urban agriculture just like, I mean, that's kind of the ticket right there, right? I mean, we think of how cool would it be, you know, if every neighborhood had, you know, its little flower farm, its little fruit farm, its little vegetable farm where you could go and get some of your produce locally, so you don't have to go and get something that was, you know, from Mexico or California or wherever. And thinking about all the other environmental costs, not just for food miles, but water and environmental benefits there. Another cool fact about urban agriculture is that it can help create this local demand. And so like it facilitates the demand for local products. I think we've kind of seen this a little bit with the farmers market in Oshkosh, where like the more people go to it, they become more aware of their local food system and they can help become more invested and find ways to invest in it. Another side fact is that urban agriculture creates like these markets for crops that are hard to ship. So things like currants or other like fruits that aren't really known because they're hard to get to a grocery store. Like there's suddenly a market there if you're growing them locally within your city. And lastly, kind of the big umbrella for the sustainable benefits of urban agriculture is the ecosystem services for cities. So growing something more than just a monoculture of grass in your yard, it increases carbon sequestration, which helps fight against climate change. All of those, you know, in our case, we are looking at doing urban orcharding, so really focusing on trees and perennial crops. That helps absorb heat and reduces the heat index in cities. That can be really beneficial for certain parts of the city, especially like low-income neighborhoods tend to have less green spaces, which then increases the temperatures in summer and in turn leads to more economic stratification, you know, where it's like pushing people out because nobody wants to live there. Again, ecosystem services, it just increases the biodiversity of plants and animals. You know, if you're planting an urban farm, you already have way more plants than when you're planting a grass lawn. And then you're also supporting pollinators. So things like, you know, butterfly habitat, birds, bees, all of those things can find homes and spaces and benefit from having these diverse little patchworks across the city. And then because urban agriculture uses water in a different way than a typical lawn would, it can help reduce rainwater and flooding events in a city through either water catchment. You know, the farm's going to try to catch as much water as possible. I know that on our property, we already have several IBC totes for storing water during rainwater events. So we're capturing that water. And then with permaculture design too, the goal is to slow and retain as much water as possible on property. So planting fruit trees and other crops in a way that helps slow the water movement down across like a slope or a landscape and helping that really sink in so it's not just rushing off into the street and creating these flooding hazards. So that's all the good stuff. It's not to say that urban farming and urban agriculture doesn't come without its challenges, because it does. I think one of the biggest barriers and challenges for urban agriculture is educating the public on the importance of it and like how it's different than industrial farm. Like you're not going to have a tractor in your backyard if you're doing urban agriculture. You know, most urban agriculture, you're only using muscle power or anything that would be already allowed in a backyard, like a tiller or a leaf blower. And so like that's one of the really big challenges. Another challenge is that regulation does need to happen. I think like this can be done in a really poor way. Like if someone doesn't know what they're doing and they don't have experience, it can be odorous and encourage pests and just be a blight on the city if it's not done right, and if there's no like checks and balances for how do we do this and what constitutes as a business. Like what sort of regulation needs to surround somebody who wants to take their lawn and turn into, say, a flower farm or you know, a food forest and then make a profit off of that. What does that look like? So we reached out to the city. We spoke with some city planners. Originally, when I was reviewing Oshkosh's like ordinances and codes and permits, I thought maybe we would fall under the home occupation permit, which is a $25 a year permit for somebody to work out of their home. But that permit states that you can't have evidence, and so like existing outside the home. And since all my plants would be outside my house, we would not be allowed to do that permit. So then we were proposed to do a conditional use permit for cultivation, just a $415 permit. And in and around that permit, we were told that, you know, like we wouldn't really be able to have people on our property, and there would be some other things that we found would be barriers to urban agriculture. One, in the high cost of that permit for a startup for a farm. And then two, urban agriculture is so about building community and having people come and learn and be part of it, that we found that that permit was rather challenging. And so we started to look at other cities to see what they did and how they zoned this and worked this into their zoning codes in a way that was a bit more accessible and open for the public to be able to engage in urban agriculture. And so that kind of leads us to our case study of St. Paul. And so the next few slides are pretty word heavy, because they are all about, like, we went online and we literally brought for you all of the zoning code from St. Paul to look at. This picture is Urban Roots, which is another urban farm in St. Paul, and it manages about 1 acre rather across 6 urban sites. So they have a few different sites. They also have a really big youth program. So they help teach entrepreneurship to youth interns, you know, where they do marketing skills and horticulture skills. But anyway, onto the zoning codes. So they define urban agriculture in St. Paul as the principal use of land for production of food or horticultural crops to be harvested, sold, or donated. If you want to do this on a vacant property, you got to submit an urban agriculture application with some fees and some supporting documentation. Anybody who wants to do an urban farm or any sort of urban agriculture has to do a soil lead test. And I do have all the links in this presentation for everything I've talked about. So if any, you know, if you want them to review that later, we're happy to share this with you. And so moving on to kind of look more at the nitty gritty of it. So you have to have approval of a site plan. So you got to have a map of your place. Like, where are you going to have your structures? Where are you growing things? Are you putting up fencing? What does that look like? And additionally, going back to that soil lead test, it has to be less than 100 parts per million in the soil. Otherwise, it has to be a raised bed with a barrier to the soil on that property. Building permits still apply. And then for St. Paul, if you're in a residential, traditional, or neighborhood or business district, if you have more than 1 acre, then you do need a conditional use permit, and that looks a bit different. We didn't really reach into what that all quite looks like because we exist on 1 acre and we're actually not farming all of our land. We have a house and a garage and other things, so we wouldn't reach that, and so we haven't dug deeper into that yet. I mean, all the same ordinances and other things for the city stand. Like, you can't be noisy, you got to keep your property looking nice. One thing to note about St. Paul's ordinances is that they can currently only keep bees there. And so when looking at this to considering adapting it for the Oshkosh, we would suggest adding language for keeping chickens and potentially ducks if the duck ordinance goes through various permits. Yeah, and so you got to keep your tools and everything looking nice. So, like, you have to keep the property looking nice. It can't just look like a junkyard, right? And then lastly, one big thing to note is whenever the agriculture is discontinued, the property has to be restored. So it's got to be like some sort of grass or ground cover put back in a way that, you know, the next person who's going to take over that property can do whatever they want with it. this is taking a closer look then. They do have a subsection for if you're on less than an acre. So they have this talking about where on-site sales are limited to the products grown on site, so you can only sell what you grew or did yourself. And in their wording, it says that sales are limited to 3 times a calendar year from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That was unclear to us whether that was like a big sale, like an annual plant sale, or like a fall harvest festival type deal, or if that's like consumers coming to pick up like their weekly goods, you know, say like we want to do something similar to a CSA where people would come and pick up their produce like once a week. So when looking at doing it for Oshkosh, like what needs regulation there? Like if I want to have, you know, a student group come and tour my farm and learn about urban agriculture, like what regulations surround that? Is that something that we need to lay out, or is that something that can kind of just happen under the fact that we're a business and we have people who come to our place? You know, they have a note saying that you can't do it on a public sidewalk or a boulevard. So I can't just put up a veggie stand in my front yard and like hark at people who driving by. You got to have it like back, be part of like your building, your structure, your house, however that looks. It needs to be integrated into what already exists in a way that's aesthetically pleasing and pretty considerate of the neighborhood around you. They have some other things about structures and building permits. One thing to note is that they allow one identification sign. So you're going to have a 6 square feet rather of sign in your front yard saying like, hey, I'm a business, I'm an urban farm, I exist. Which, as far as I could tell, the home occupation permit in Oshkosh does not allow any sort of signage for their house or to allow to know that the business is there. They have a few other applicable code requirements. So like you got to keep your place looking nice. You can't have garbage and waste and stuff all over. You got to control erosion. And you know, you can't have insects and rodents all over, and your grass can't be that tall. So lastly, the fees. So the urban agriculture application fee, it looks like it's a one-time fee for St. Paul, and it would just be $32 to get approved to do this. It looks more like a permit where you just turn it in, somebody reviews it and says, sure, you can do it. But then you also have to get like your other permits, you know, if you wanted to keep animals. So in Oshkosh's case, like whatever chicken, dog, bee permit, you have to get those, got to get like a building permit at a greenhouse. If you want to put a fence up around your property, you know, whatever you want to do, you still have to go through all those other permitting processes. So that was a lot of code. So in summary, what we would like to propose for Oshkosh is that we would like to propose that the Sustainability Advisory Board would take up and kind of work with to propose this to council or planning commission to adopt this urban agriculture definition, and then to adopt pretty much all the language and standards from St. Paul. They seem, from everyone that we looked at, we took a little bit into Detroit and some other urban farms, and some of those get pretty lengthy based on like what kind of background the city has, but we really felt like St. Paul was pretty much on par with what Oshkosh would expect. You know, so everybody's got to submit like an application. You know, you got to have like your documentation about your soil lead test. You got to have a plan, like where are you going to put all your stuff? You know, adapt the wording to be inclusive to, you know, keeping chickens and ducks and bees on your property, and then clarifying that sales structure. So looking at like what can a business do? We would want to say that we could have people come to our farm. We would love to host student groups or, you know, interested community members, and we'd love to be able to have people come be able to pick up their produce once a week. And then adopt the fee structure. So urban agriculture, we want this to be equitable to all people, and a $415 permit to get off the ground growing food is not super equitable for all people, especially if like you're looking at someone who is lower income who wants a side hobby to lift them out of poverty. That could be half your paycheck. And so really keeping that to like the $50 or below range is what we'd like to ask for. This is a picture of our backyard a couple weeks ago, and we covered everything because it got really, really cold. These are a few pictures of our property over the last couple of years as we've been slowly changing it. So we have black currants growing all over our property. We have, and that's on the left, we have Anna's hyssop on the right, which is a native plant that also works as a great beneficial attractor for insects. And this is a Pennsylvania leatherwing, which is like the organic farmer's best friend because they're super great to have around to control other pests. and then we have some raised beds on the right. So that is our kind of fast and furious presentation. And yeah, we'd love to have questions.
Thank you so much, Jen. Does anybody on the board have questions for them? Brad?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Jen. Did you look into other cities in Wisconsin as like a benchmark or comparison?
I've talked with Margie a little bit about this. I don't know if I'm just really bad at finding ordinances, but I have tried. The last thing I found for Milwaukee is that it was like from 2013, 2011. And it was just like a proposal to review Milwaukee's thing, but I was having a really hard time finding what exactly the updated code looked like. And I also tried looking into some for Madison, and we are having a hard time finding like what exactly the ordinances are for those. And we haven't reached out to any city planners yet, although we're happy to do so if that's necessary.
No, I think what you've done is great. I was just curious if there were any readily available ordinances or codes that existed in other municipalities in Wisconsin, and perhaps they don't, or perhaps that is not just open or readily available, right? We can infer lots of things from that. I don't have any other questions other than, I guess, for Margie or the group, which would just be like, what do we need to do as a next step? But I'll let others ask questions of Jen if needed.
Okay, I see that Lisa also has her hand raised.
Hey Jen, thanks. So yeah, I was actually looking into some ordinances for this as well, and I really couldn't find anything either. And I did have a discussion with an environmental planner who basically said like they just don't have codes available for this right now. So what happens is people will call and request, and they might like refer them to the farmers market or something similar to that. So I just think like it's not something that has been brought up to the planners yet, but we could definitely start asking them to.
Yeah, we'd love that.
Mark Lyons, are you still on the call with us?
I am.
Is this something that we'll also be covering in that joint workshop that we'll be having in a couple of weeks? Next
This
week?
is not part of that. No.
This is not a part of that, okay.
There's
So this
some-
would require some more work from the Sustainability Board to work with Jen and maybe pull something together is.
Yeah, I would caution the board because Jen, as proposed, wouldn't actually help you. It talks about in the definition the primary use. So that is removing the fact that you have a home there, which is your primary use, and residential is always the primary use of the property when you have a home there. So that definition, as it's crafted, wouldn't help like your situation. That definition is targeted at vacant properties, which, for example, like in Oshkosh, we have community gardens, and a lot of the ordinances statewide are more talking about community gardens that would support urban farming. So if the goal here is to look at changing how you do it on a single family residential property that contains an existing single family home, we're going to need to do a little more work.
And what steps would we be taking for that, Mark?
So this is something we'll want to have potentially we would definitely want plan commission and council to weigh in it. I know staff has some reservations on this one a little bit compared to the solar, because as a comment was made earlier, there are people that don't necessarily know how to do this, and it can have a negative impact on a neighborhood. That's why we presently do cultivation in the city as a conditional use permit. So those factors can be weighed, those discussions can be had. If the conditional use permit is removed and it's made by right permitted, enforcement or regulations become extremely difficult from the city side of things. We can put regulations in, but as we know, then we're talking about taking people to court if they refuse to follow them, where a conditional use permit does give the city to have a little more regulatory overview to say, well, you didn't do what you said you were going to do, therefore we're going to remove your conditional use permit. So we'll want to weigh those positives and negatives of having some ability to regulate and remove the use from someone who is not appropriately using it versus making it by right permitted. Once you make it by right permitted, it's just that, it's by right permitted, and your ability to enforce regulations and standards does go down.
Okay. Another question on a different subject for you, Mark. I see that somebody who's not on the board is wanting to speak. Are we allowed to do that at this point in our meeting?
I'd have to see the rules and regulations for your board of sustainability. Most boards and commissions don't typically allow public comment on a workshop setting or a presentation type setting. But as you are the board, you could most definitely entertain hearing comment if you so wish.
Okay, well, in that case, I would like to ask the board as a group if there is anyone who would not want to hear from Misty McPhee on this at this point. Would you please raise your hand and let me know that? And by that, well, you can't do that because I can't see most of you. Speak up if you don't want Misty to talk. Otherwise, I'm giving her the floor. Okay, Misty, go for it.
I would just like to say that I'm in a household right now with probably 25 to 30 other people, and every single person here supports this idea and would love to see Jen and Adam to be able to have an urban farm in their home and support the community through agriculture and through food, because food is one of the staples of who we are as a community and how we take care of each other as a community. And so we would like to see Jen and Adam be able to contribute to that effort in any way possible. And again, there are 30 people here who think that. This isn't just me.
Okay, Misty, thank you. It's good you brought this cheering section, Jen. I see Aaron has something.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen and David, for putting this presentation together. I think kind of the sentiment that I'm getting from these past few presentations is there's a lot of, maybe this is not the right word, unnecessary or burdensome regulations in Oshkosh. And I've been seeing this from people in the community who brought this up on a number of issues. I get there's some negatives that could result in this. And I hope we do this research because I think this is a fantastic opportunity. Anything we can do to increase sustainability, encourage people to, better the environment, things like that. I think we should seriously consider it. I hope we do this. I know there's others on council who support it. I feel like we just need to, relax a little on some of these regulations, and maybe that's just a personal opinion, but, I really hope we look at this we seriously take this up. Thank you.
And Lisa.
Yeah, I think I left my hand raised.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind then. And Misty, is your hand up again, or is that from before? Okay. Well, I think what I'm hearing is that we would like to definitely explore this a little bit more at the sustainability board level. And then we have to wait and see what the process is with the city. We actually are waiting on kind of a flow chart from the city to explain to sustainability board and all the boards and commissions in the city what the process should be. This was a question that was raised several months ago and has not yet been resolved. So I can't tell you what the exact flow chart procedure is yet because I don't have the flow chart. I don't think anybody does, but we will have that to guide us very shortly, I'm hopeful. In the meantime, we definitely appreciate all the information you gave us. It did give us some things to look at. One thing that I will share with you all is that through another group that I belong to, I've recently been in touch with a lot of people from the area, from 9 or 13 different towns and cities in the area, shall we say. And they kind of gave Oshkosh the award for the greatest transparency. Apparently, Oshkosh is the best at posting things online, letting people know what's happening within the community. And this was wonderful to hear, but it kind of surprised me because I had not ever been looking on other sites for a lot of this information, So I know that we're doing a lot of things right in the city, but this is obviously one of those things that we do need to do some more work on. So rest assured, your food party, Misty, I have to say, you should have included us in that. But beyond that, your message has not fallen on deaf ears by any means, and we will definitely be working on this one way or the other. We just can't give you a timeline at this point. So, which I'm sorry.
Jen, I would like, if it's possible, for the meeting, it would have been nice to have that presentation, I think, as part of the meeting packet. But I think if you can get that to me, I might be able to retroly add it to the online documents. That way it's just available for the public, and it'll just be out there. So if you want to, after sometime this week, try to
Yeah,
get that over to me. I don't know if you still have my email address or not, but
I do. I can definitely email it to you right away.
okay, sounds good. Thank you. And PDF format would be fine too if it doesn't come through on PowerPoint.
Sounds good. Yeah. I mean,
Does anybody else on the board have any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we will move on then. Thank you so much.
thank you for giving us this opportunity.
We loved hearing from you. Okay, next thing on our agenda tonight is the Menominee Park Shoreland Restoration Update. And in Michelle's absence tonight, she did share with me her update. So we cleared the trails and laid new wood chips on the west end of the Millers Bay Trail and around the memorial tree. And I actually was part of that, laid down cardboard and added wood chips. That was looking very nice. We also have tree swallows nesting in 2 of our 3 nest boxes. And she says, yay! That was an emoji, could you tell? We're going to give the Millers Bayside a trim this Saturday from 9 to noon, and the rain date is this Sunday. So if anyone wants to help with that, of course, you're very welcome to go and help. There are always people there, Michelle and others, who can tell you what you should be trimming and what you shouldn't be trimming, which is always one of the big questions I have because I'm not real good at all that plant stuff. But the more the merrier and the faster the work gets done. So she just wanted to put that out there. And with that, we will move on to our APRA recommendations. This is an item for discussion that Brandon will lead.
Give me 1 second here. I'll get it pulled up.
So I'll talk a little bit why Brandon works on this. So just today we got these forms, which is the start of the process of some direction from city manager Roloff to go out to all boards and commissions and start to garner discussion about potential uses for the ARPA funding. They've put together some forms for us to provide to you that can help to facilitate a way to get your ideas and your thoughts to council. Ultimately, all of these forms will be aggregated and supplied to council as they make some very difficult upcoming decisions on what they would like to spend this money for. There are some, like I said, I think Brandon's got the forms right up now. We'll be sending these out to all board and commission members, but we do want you to take a look at them. And if you have thoughts or ideas that you feel that city should use the ARPA funding for, that you fill one out and send it in to us so we can get it included in those documents that will ultimately go into council for those decisions to be made. This is COVID-related funding. So, most of the things we would like to at least have a COVID-related impact in mind. But the city manager said, give us any ideas you have, and we'll make sure we get them over to council so they can have their deliberation and discussion on it. All right, Brandon. Did I stall on?
I will add that there is 2 forms One is if you're a citizen of Oshkosh, and then the other one is the one that Mark just kind of talked about. So for all of you that live in the city, I would encourage you to, once these forms are online and it's like, put out there, if you have any ideas, definitely fill one out on a personal level as well. And then I guess here's the nonprofit, organization form if you guys want to just briefly read through this at all, and if you have any questions, we can try to get those answered.
So if this is for nonprofits and the other is for citizens, are we recommending anything as a sustainability board?
So it does say community groups, I believe, at the top, which I believe is what we've, and I'll follow up on this as well. I believe that's the one we're looking at having boards and commission use. But I did send an email asking for clarification on that as well.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Initially,
so we can go with...
I just think initially when the email came through, Mark, I think you're correct that it was this wording here, community groups, was lumping in the City of Oshkosh boards and commissions and all other community groups, I believe. So.
Okay, so we could go as wild as we wanted with this, with ideas, right? The worst they can do is say no.
Right. So again, once these are, I don't know if this is still in draft format. If it is, then it's probably not released yet, but at some point it will be released. I'm hoping soon, because it does say up here at the top that it has to be in by July 2nd. So as soon as it's released, I'll send out an email to everybody on the board, and you guys will have it. And then we don't have to have a meeting in order for it to be filled out. You just respond back to me with your ideas, or if you're one-on-one collaborating with each other, so you're not in quorum, and you could come back to me with some ideas, then I can fill this out with you or on my own, and then we can get it submitted. So as soon as I get the okay to that it's ready, I will send it out to all of you, and you can, I guess, review it more at that point if it's if we want to keep moving.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about this? I kind of don't know enough about it at the moment to ask an intelligent question. How about you?
Yeah, this is brand new to me. I just got this at 4 o'clock. So.
Okay, well, we'll just watch for it and see what you send us, but we do need to keep in mind that July 2nd deadline. And as Brandon said, if anybody wants to, if any two of us want to get together and work on this, we can do that. However, 3 of us could not. So, and that's because of the walking quorum rules of open meeting laws. Okay, well then let's move on if there are no questions to our meetings in personal or virtual discussion and action. And I take it this means for upcoming meetings. Just so you're all aware, we will not be having a meeting in July because we fall on the first Monday of the month. We miss both July and September for our meetings, usually because of where the federal holiday falls. So we can always schedule an additional special meeting if we have something really in the works that has to be done. We didn't see any need for that in July, so we are planning for our next meeting to be on August 2nd. So the question here is actually by August 2nd, do we want to continue to meet like this virtually, or do we want to go back to meeting in person? It is going to be an all or nothing thing. Although the city council is allowing the council to meet and still have people attend virtually, the boards and commissions are not given that option. So I guess what I need to know is how you guys feel. I don't frankly care either way. the plan commission is meeting non-virtually. We're back in person and it wasn't scary at all. And I think Aaron, the council's meeting in person, right? So it sort of feels kind of natural actually, but I just always sit there and look and go, I hope anybody who really needs a mask is wearing one, but that's not on me. So your thoughts,
Go ahead, Brad.
everyone? Brad.
I would prefer to be meeting in person. I just think it fosters better conversation. But I guess the only thing I would say is the folks who are on the board who the last time we had this discussion and wanted to remain virtual aren't here. So I guess I'd feel a little badly making a decision that they would not favor or they potentially may not favor unless their circumstances have changed or like I guess because it's all or nothing, I just wouldn't want to put somebody in a tough spot, but my vote would be in person.
Okay, does anybody else have any thoughts on this? Aaron?
Oh, go ahead, Aaron.
Sorry, I guess I would just say, yeah, council's been meeting and our last meeting was in person and it went well. I know I'm also on the DEI committee and I believe they voted at their last meeting to return in person as well. And they have a fairly large committee. So I'm in favor of returning in person. I think it would be great to see everyone and it just kind of helps things being able to talk to people in person.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm fine with going in person if that's what we decide. So we can talk to the other people or send an email maybe, but I think overall with everyone getting the vaccine and it just might be better for us to meet in person.
Is there anyone who is currently at this meeting that would object to meeting in person in August? Okay, well, with that in mind, I guess that's discussion. I guess we should take some action on this. Do we need to do a roll call on this, Brandon?
I honestly don't know. I know that we had to last time. I think we should, just so it's for the record.
Okay, better safe than sorry. So then we're gonna need a motion, please, from anybody. Somebody I can see would be nice. How about you, Aaron?
I make a motion to return to in-person meetings starting at our August 2nd committee meeting.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, and then Brandon, if you'd call the roll, please.
Okay, Mr. Spanbauer,
Aye.
Miss Marone,
Aye.
Mr. DeGroot,
Aye.
Mr. Beardsley,
Aye.
Miss Oliver,
Aye.
Mr. Wojciechowski. I'll get it
Aye.
right eventually. And Miss Davy.
Aye. Okay, then I guess our meeting in August will be in person. Items for future agendas, i.e. August. I'm guessing we'll have another Menominee. Oh, Brandon, I'm sorry, what?
No, it's okay. I have something for just to update everybody on it. That's a good point or a good time to do that. So I just wanted to let everybody know the duck ordinance will be, its first reading for council will be on June 22nd. So mark your calendars if you want to attend and say anything. And then the second reading will then be July 13th.
Excellent. Thank you.
So
July.
again, that's first reading June 22nd, second reading July 13th. That's all.
Okay. Well, no, that's fantastic news. Thank you. I know some people who will be very happy to hear that. Okay, well, that'll get us through June and July, and then in August, we'll have the Menominee Park Shoreline Restoration Report again, I'm sure. And in the meantime, it's possible that Michelle will be sending out some announcements, or if anyone is interested in helping at the site, you can always contact Michelle and ask her when they'll be there too. Feel free to do that. We will no doubt be having some kind of report on both of our presentations that we had today. And whether it's, and Brandon and I will talk about this between now and then, but it sounds like something will have already moved ahead with the solar panels by then, if that's already going to Plan Commission next week. And the permaculture, we're obviously going to need to have some more discussion on. So, Vic.
Yeah, I was just wondering if maybe we wanted to add like a standing topic of just like our SAB goals, just for like an open platform, just so like we can share any updates that we have every month. So we don't have to title it, like this is the specific one we did, but just as like an opening for any member to share any updates that they have.
We can ask if we're allowed to do that. I know they have managed to do that on the council, bypassing something where they give the updates at the end. I'm not sure. We'll have to ask if we can do that, because it may be something that would have to be noticed so the public knew that we'd be discussing it. I'm not sure, but let's ask.
I can look into that, I suppose. So, like, for instance, is like the Menominee Shoreline Restoration, I think, is one of the goals. So it'd be
Right.
like having that on the schedule versus just saying SAB goals, where we could talk about that and other goals, right? That's the question, right, Vic?
Yeah, so like a great example is like one of the ones that I have is hosting like a rain barrel workshop, but like I didn't get that in time to have it added to the meeting, so like I don't know if I can officially give an update. So like things like that, like if we're missing these deadlines of getting things added to the agenda, just like a platform for board members to share what we've worked on recently.
So kind of share successes too.
Yeah.
What's happened in the last month. So basically a report on what we've accomplished.
Yeah, just wondering if that's
Yeah.
like a possibility.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. And actually, Vic, I had thought of that, and the reason I thought of it was because Pat had mentioned what an absolutely fantastic job you had done with a rain barrel workshop, and she wanted to give you kudos, but then she was not able to be here tonight. So, so yeah, I hear you did a really good job, and thank you very much.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, and I was very glad that you were able to get that accomplished, and I assume now we are totally out of barrels. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So I will say, Vic, if you want, that's good information for me to know too. I'm keeping track this year of all of our accomplishments. So at the end of the year, when I have to write the yearly, what's it called?
Annual report.
Yeah, the annual report, that I have like a good list of things. So like that's a perfect example of something that we're going to want to get on that for next year. So if you want to send me an email with like a brief, it doesn't need to be a paragraph is fine. It's just something to let me know what happened. That'd be great.
Yeah, and if anything, that's just like another reason to add it to the agenda. Like if you need a list of like our accomplishments, I think every
Right.
month just having that opportunity to share them would probably be the best way to get them to you as well.
Yeah, it makes it easy for me for sure.
Okay.
So
Thank
again,
you
I'll look into that too.
And I'll send you an email.
Accomplishments. Maybe we can just call it monthly accomplishments or something clever like that. Anything else for future agendas that anyone has on their radar at the moment? It seems like something always comes up. We never seem to want for things to talk about, do we? Okay, we'll see nothing else then. I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Don't all jump at once, folks.
Motion to adjourn. Lisa.
Thank you. Second, please.
Eric, I'll second.
Thank you. And Brandon, I think because we're virtual yet, you need to call the roll for that.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay, one more time. Mr. Spanbauer,
Aye.
Miss Marone,
Aye.
Mr. DeGroot, Mr. Beardsley,
Aye.
Miss Oliver,
Aye.
Mr. Wojciechowski,
Aye.
and Miss Davy.
Aye. Thank you, guys. Have a really awesome summer.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Aye.